In the tumultuous landscape of international trade, the ongoing conflict between the United States and China has captured global attention, particularly as recent developments suggest a shift in strategy from both sides. President Donald Trump has recently indicated a willingness to negotiate with China, hinting at possible reductions in the steep tariffs he imposed. However, these overtures are met with skepticism both domestically and abroad, as China's leadership appears resolute in its stance, believing it holds the upper hand in this high-stakes economic showdown. In a press conference earlier this week, Trump stated that his administration is poised to reduce tariffs on Chinese goods, a stark contrast to the aggressive tariff strategy he has championed since taking office. These tariffs will come down substantially, Trump declared, expressing hope for a resolution. Yet the Chinese government quickly refuted claims of ongoing negotiations, labeling them as groundless. Their position is clear: they see little incentive to engage in talks under the current conditions, particularly with the U.S. unwilling to lift tariffs entirely before negotiations begin. The dynamics of this trade war are complex. Despite facing significant economic challenges including deflation and a struggling property sector, China appears to believe it can weather the storm longer than the Trump administration. Analysts suggest that the Chinese government is banking on the notion that the longer the conflict drags on, the more pressure will mount on Trump to capitulate. "Time is on our side," one Chinese official remarked, echoing a sentiment held by many in Beijing. This confidence stems from several factors, most notably China's less dependent economic structure compared to the United States. While American consumers rely heavily on Chinese goods, China exports only about 15% of its products to the U.S. This fundamental economic imbalance means that while U.S. tariffs are painful, they are not crippling to China in the long run. As Trump's tariffs bite deeper, particularly in sectors reliant on Chinese imports, such as electronics and pharmaceuticals, American manufacturers may soon find themselves unable to sustain operations amid rising costs and dwindling supplies. Compounding this situation is the lack of support from U.S. allies in the trade war. Efforts to rally European and Asian nations against China have largely faltered as they express reluctance to jeopardize their own trade relationships with Beijing. Japan and the European Union, for instance, have publicly distanced themselves from any U.S.-led economic bloc aimed at countering China, citing their own dependence on Chinese exports. "We have no intention of decoupling from China," a European Commission spokesperson stated, highlighting the challenge Trump faces in amassing a coalition. Domestically, the political fallout from the trade war is already evident. Trump's approval ratings regarding economic management have plummeted, with a Reuters Ipsos poll revealing a significant majority of Americans feeling the negative impact of the tariffs on their personal finances. The longer the trade war continues, the more dire the consequences may become for Trump's political future, potentially jeopardizing Republican control in Congress. As the landscape shifts, China is also exploring potential tariff exemptions on critical U.S. imports, particularly in sectors crucial to its supply chains. Michael Hart, president of the American Chamber of Commerce in China, reported that Chinese officials are considering which American products may be too vital to subject to tariffs. This move signals a potential opening for negotiations, albeit under China's terms. Trump has expressed his desire for substantial concessions from China, such as greater access for U.S. businesses to the Chinese market. However, analysts caution that without clear objectives and a coherent strategy, any negotiations may falter. The lack of serious talks and defined goals complicates the path toward resolution, leaving both economies in a precarious position. Looking ahead, the possibility of renewed discussions remains, particularly as both leaders are scheduled to meet at the upcoming APEC summit in November. This meeting could serve as a pivotal moment for de-escalation, but whether it leads to meaningful dialogue or merely further posturing remains to be seen. As the trade war continues to unfold, the implications for both nations and the global economy could be profound, highlighting the intricate balance of power in international trade relations. In a landscape marked by fluctuating trade relations, the ongoing tariff tensions between the United States and China have taken a notable turn. suggesting a possible easing of hostilities. On April 25, 2025, reports surfaced indicating that the Chinese government has quietly rolled back tariffs on certain U.S. imports, particularly semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. This move comes amid a backdrop of mixed messages from U.S. President Donald Trump, who has expressed a desire for concessions from Beijing in exchange for any potential tariff relief. The recent developments reflect a complex and often contradictory narrative. While Trump asserted that he had spoken with Chinese President Xi Jinping, a claim that Beijing promptly denied, the Chinese embassy in Washington emphasized that no negotiations were currently taking place regarding tariffs. The U.S. should stop creating confusion, the embassy stated on social media. These conflicting messages have only added to the uncertainty that currently envelopes U.S. China relations. Despite the bluster, Wall Street reacted positively to the news of tariff rollbacks, with investors hopeful for a broader de-escalation of trade tensions. However, the reality on the ground reveals a more intricate scenario. In recent weeks, China had dramatically increased import duties on U.S. goods, raising tariffs to 125% from 84%, while U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports have surged to 145%. This tit-for-tat escalation has had consequences, leading to increased costs for consumers and businesses alike. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent hinted at a potential trade agreement with South Korea, praising the nation's cooperative approach. Trump has indicated optimism about securing multiple trade deals in the coming weeks, a sentiment echoed by various business leaders who are navigating the uncertain landscape created by tariffs. However, concerns remain that without substantial concessions from China, Trump may be reluctant to ease current tariffs. As the debate around tariffs continues, corporate America is feeling the strain. Companies across a range of sectors are adjusting their profit forecasts, grappling with rising production costs attributed to tariffs. For example, consumer giants like PepsiCo have already warned of increased costs and volatility due to Trump's trade policies. Likewise, major airlines are reducing flight capacities in response to shifting consumer spending patterns as Americans grow increasingly wary of the economic impact of ongoing trade disputes. The situation is further complicated by a burgeoning trade deal between the U.S. and India, which aims to address key issues such as e-commerce and agricultural exports. This move indicates that the U.S. is actively seeking to expand its trade partnerships while navigating its contentious relationship with China. Amid these developments, the Chinese government is reportedly considering exempting specific U.S. goods from tariffs, including medical equipment and industrial chemicals, as a means to alleviate the economic pressure on its domestic market. President Xi Jinping has announced plans to strengthen China's economy against external shocks, emphasizing the importance of domestic consumption and fiscal stimulus in response to the challenges posed by U.S. tariffs. As the rhetoric surrounding tariffs continues to evolve, market analysts are closely monitoring the situation for signs of productive dialogue between the world's two largest economies. The outlook remains uncertain, with both sides seemingly poised for a protracted standoff. However, the recent signs of tariff relief from China could signal a willingness to negotiate, albeit under conditions that may prove challenging for the Trump administration. In conclusion, while the landscape of U.S. China trade relations remains fraught with tension and uncertainty, recent developments hint at a potential thaw in hostilities. As both nations navigate this complex web of tariffs and negotiations, the coming weeks will be crucial in determining whether a more amicable resolution is within reach or if the trade war will persist, reshaping global economic dynamics for years to come. As tensions escalate in the Indo-Pacific, the strategic significance of Guam has come into sharp focus. This small island, a U.S. territory, is not just a picturesque tropical locale, it is a pivotal military hub that could determine the outcome of any potential conflict between the United States and China. With China increasingly flexing its military capabilities and ambitions, particularly regarding Taiwan, the role of Guam as a bastion of American deterrence is more critical than ever. Guam's historical significance to U.S. military operations dates back to the Spanish-American War. but its relevance has evolved dramatically in the face of modern geopolitical challenges. Hosting crucial installations like Andersen Air Force Base and vital naval facilities, Guam serves as a forward operating base for American forces ready to respond to crises across Asia. The island's strategic location allows the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command INDOPACOM to project power in response to threats against allies such as Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. However, as the People's Liberation Army (PLA) expands its naval and missile capabilities, Guam has become a prime target. China's military modernization efforts have been extensive, with a concerted focus on developing sophisticated missile systems, particularly the Dongfeng series, aimed at neutralizing U.S. assets in the region. According to a 2024 U.S. Department of Defense report, the PLA rocket force possesses over 3,100 ballistic missiles, including the Dongfeng 27, which has a striking range capable of targeting Guam directly. In recent statements, Chinese officials have underscored their intent to assert control over Taiwan, with President Xi Jinping emphasizing that all means are on the table for achieving this objective. This aggressive posture has been accompanied by military drills simulating blockades and increased provocations against regional neighbors such as the Philippines and Vietnam. The United States is acutely aware of these developments and has begun bolstering Guam's defenses. In 2023, Congress approved a $1.7 billion integrated missile defense system designed to protect critical military assets on the island. Advanced systems like THAAD terminal high-altitude area defense and Aegis missile defense are already in place to intercept potential threats. A U.S. Pacific Fleet spokesman recently indicated that contingency planning is underway to prepare for various conflict scenarios involving the PLA. This includes strengthening intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance ISR capabilities to identify vulnerabilities in Chinese missile systems. The necessity for robust defensive measures is paramount, especially given the increasing sophistication of Chinese military technology such as hypersonic missiles and advanced targeting systems. Guam's strategic importance cannot be overstated. It not only serves as a military outpost but also as a critical logistics hub for U.S. operations throughout the Indo-Pacific. With Chinese military capabilities rapidly evolving, the U.S. must remain vigilant. The potential for conflict in the region could lead to a military buildup that rivals the logistics of historic operations like D-Day, providing the U.S. with an opportunity to prepare and respond effectively. Despite the daunting challenges posed by China's growing aggression, the U.S. military's commitment to maintaining a strong presence in Guam is unwavering, as both nations navigate this complex landscape. The stakes are high. Not only does the future of U.S.-China relations hinge on territorial disputes and military posturing, but the broader implications for global stability and security are also at risk. As the situation continues to develop, the world watches closely. The dynamics of military preparedness and strategic investment in Guam will likely influence the balance of power in the region and shape the course of U.S.-China relations for years to come. The island's role as a linchpin in American defense strategy underscores the importance of preparedness in a rapidly changing geopolitical environment where every decision could have far-reaching consequences.